The ice moon of Vestera 9 wasn't meant for life. Its surface temperatures hovered at -40 degrees, and its atmosphere carried barely enough oxygen to sustain the mining colony that clung to its equator like a desperate parasite. Yet life found a way, as it always did. Lizera adjusted her thermal suit's collar as she stepped out of the cargo bay, her breath forming crystalline clouds even through the suit's heating system. She was human, one of only 3 on this forsaken rock, and she'd volunteered for the night shift inventory check because everyone else found the cold unbearable. Humans, she'd learned, had a peculiar tolerance for discomfort that other species found either admirable or insane. The storage facility sat half a kilometer from the main colony, a series of prefabricated domes that housed equipment too sensitive for the colony's crowded spaces. Lysera's boots crunched through the frost as she made her rounds, checking seals and monitoring temperatures with practiced efficiency. That's when she heard it. A whimper. Soft, frightened, barely audible over the wind's howl. Lysera froze, her hand moving instinctively to the plasma cutter at her hip. Vestera 9 had indigenous fauna, small, seal-like creatures the colonists called frostkin. They were supposed to be harmless, but protocols existed for a reason. She followed the sound to the gap between 2 storage containers. Where the wind had carved a small hollow in the snow, there, pressed against the metal wall and shaking violently, was a frostkin cub no larger than a house cat. Its silvery fur was matted and thin, and its enormous black eyes, adapted for the long nights, stared up at her with unmistakable terror. One of its hind legs was twisted at an unnatural angle. "Oh, little one," Lysera whispered, her heart clenching. The cub tried to crawl away, but its injured leg made movement nearly impossible. It let out a distressed chirp that cut through Lysera like a knife. She knew the protocols. No interference with native species, especially juveniles. The xenobiologists had strict guidelines about contamination and ecosystem disruption, but Lysera also knew what it meant to be cold, alone, and hurt. She glanced back at the colony lights in the distance. No one would check on her for another hour. The cub wouldn't survive another hour. "Screw the protocols," she muttered. Lysera removed her outer thermal jacket slowly, keeping her movements gentle and predictable. The cub hissed, a thin, reedy sound, but it had nowhere to run. When she wrapped the jacket around its small body, it went rigid with fear. "Shh, shh," Lysera murmured, lifting the bundle carefully. The cub weighed almost nothing. She could feel its rapid heartbeat through the fabric, a frantic drumming that spoke of pure panic. She pressed the bundle against her chest, where her body heat could reach it through the inner layers of her suit. The cub struggled weakly, its chirps turning desperate. And then, without thinking, Lysera began to sing. It was an old song, one her grandmother had sung to her during thunderstorms when she was small. The words were in a language half forgotten, a melody that spoke of safety and warmth and the promise that dawn always followed darkness. Her voice was rough from disuse, she hadn't sung in months, but she poured every ounce of gentleness into those notes. The cub's struggling slowed. Lysera kept singing, rocking slightly as she carried her bundle back toward the storage office. The melody wove through the howling wind, a thread of warmth in the frozen night. She sang of summer days and growing things, of mothers watching over sleeping children, of courage in the face of fear. By the time she reached the office, the cub had stopped shaking. She set up an improvised nest in an empty equipment crate, lining it with thermal blankets and positioning a heat lamp overhead. The cub watched her with those huge dark eyes, no longer afraid, just curious. "Your leg needs medical attention," Lysera said softly, examining the injury. "I'll have to call Draven." Draven was the colony's chief medical officer, a Zentari whose 6-fingered hands could perform microsurgery with astonishing precision. He was also notoriously strict about protocols. The comm link crackled. "Draven here." "This better be important, Lysera. I was in REM Phase 3. I need you at Storage Bay 7, medical emergency." "Injury? Contamination? Give me parameters." Lysera glanced at the cub, which had curled into a tiny ball of silver fur. "Indigenous fauna. Juvenile, compound fracture. Possible hypothermia." The silence stretched for 3 full seconds. "Lysera, you know the regulations. I know a dying child when I see one, Draven. Are you coming or not?" Another pause, then a sigh that sounded like escaping steam. 20 minutes. Keep it warm. And Lysera? You're going to owe me so much paperwork, she smiled. Worth it. While she waited, Lysera continued singing. The cub had begun to make a soft purring sound, its breathing finally steady and calm. It tentatively extended one small paw toward her hand, and when she offered her finger, it wrapped tiny claws around it with surprising strength. You're going to be okay, she promised. Humans don't leave people behind, not even the little fuzzy ones. Draven arrived with a medical kit and a disapproving expression that lasted exactly until he saw the cub. His antennae, which normally stood rigid with Zentari propriety, drooped slightly. It's very small, he observed. It's a baby. Yes, I can see that. He knelt beside the crate, his professional demeanor sliding into place. This is highly irregular. So write me up. Draven's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. Oh, I will. But first let's fix this leg. As he worked with efficient grace, Lysera kept singing. The cub remained calm throughout the procedure, its eyes fixed on her face as if she were the only anchor in a storm-tossed world. Remarkable, Draven murmured. Its stress hormones should be spiking, but they're actually decreasing. The vocalization seems to have a measurable calming effect. It's called a lullaby, Lysera said. Humans have been using them for thousands of years. Inefficient from an evolutionary standpoint. Predators could locate you. Maybe. But it keeps the little ones alive through the dark times. That's efficient enough. Draven secured the tiny splint and sat back. It'll need care for several weeks. The xenobiology team will want to know. Lysera's voice was firm. It stays with me until it's healed. Then we release it back to the wild. That's how it's going to be, Draven. The Zentari studied her for a long moment, his compound eyes reflecting the heat lamp's glow. Then his antennae twitched in what she'd learned was his version of a shrug. Humans, he said, as if that explained everything, and perhaps it did. As Draven gathered his equipment, Lysera lifted the cub carefully, cradling it against her chest. It nestled into her warmth, purring like a tiny engine, trusting and content. Outside, the frozen wind howled across Vestara 9's merciless surface. But inside the small office, wrapped in human warmth and ancient melodies, a small life had found its way back from the edge of darkness. Lysera looked down at the sleeping cub and smiled. This was what humans did. They found the broken things, the scared things, the things the universe had discarded, and they held them close until the shaking stopped. Sleep well, little one, she whispered. You're safe now. And on an ice moon where nothing should have survived, that promise meant everything.